welcome to another episode of the Mind Management Mentors podcast. Getting guests on from all over the world to talk about and share their stories of how they help other people manage their minds. And we've got a perfect example of that today, which is you, Laurie. Laurie, introduce yourself, what do you do, and where are you from?
Actually, I'm gonna just jump in real quick and say it's Laura. So,
Laura,
Laura,
apologies. Already started
yeah,
on the bad foot there, Laura.
not a bad foot at all. It's okay. But I am what I call a mindset mentor. So we do some similar things in
Yep.
there. I'm in Montana, and I do a lot of my work actually online. So I work with people all over the world. I love doing that. I get the opportunity to do that, and I help people just like you do. I help them move forward. Sometimes I might do it in a little bit different way than some people. I can tend to blend a little bit of the practical and the woo. I started in the woo world and decided somewhere along the way, people laugh at me, but I'm an astrologer and a professional intuitive, and I decided to do something really practical at one point. And so I went into working with hypnosis and NLP and all the fun stuff. So that's a little bit about me.
It's funny how you said the fun stuff. We're in the conversations that I'm having recently. I'm not 100% sure that woo's not the practical stuff. To be fair,
I find it to be very practical. The way that I work with it is very practical, but a lot of people would not say that astrology is practical or intuition, but it is. It really is. I love the way that I use it is extremely practical because it helps people almost affirm for themselves who they are, the strengths that they have. A lot of people are told from the time they're tiny, you're too this or you're too that, you're too much, you're too loud, you're too slow, you're too shy, you're too all these things. But they're born in a particular way with those strengths. And I tell them, I go in and show them, hey, you're meant to be this way. And here's how you can use that in your life to show others how to do that. Because the people who are often too loud, speak too much, they lead the way. They're the ones that light the way and say the things that need to be said. They're warriors and pioneers, and they open the door in a way that other people won't, who sit back on the sidelines and are a little afraid to have that energy coming in, to have that way of being. But when they can see someone else doing it, it allows them to kind of tap into something inside themselves that says, oh, that might be okay. That might be all right. Or someone who's really quiet, who takes the moment to think about things, to really kind of stay grounded and connected and not be impulsive and not be this. We need those people too. They let us see how to kind of have those quiet moments, how to be in that space. So whatever it is for you that you have going on, that's what I get to show people in some of the work that I do. I love it.
I I put my hand up when you said too loud. I think, and I'm sure you'll talk about this as well. Is self-awareness is key, isn't it? Is understanding that the loudness we are of, or the shyness that we have, is our strengths.
It is understanding that we have things within us, and like everything in the world, it can be used in a good way or it can be used in a not so good way. But if you're moving in the energy of the goodness of it and the strength of it, it's always going to serve you if that's something that really is in abundance within you. It always is. And the awareness changes everything in life. Everything. When you become aware of something, it will never ever be the same. You can't become unaware. It just, unless you have some big traumatic brain injury that, you get amnesia or something, but you have that awareness inside of you, and that goes with you forever. And so it changes everything.
It really does. So when I'm talking to all the guests that we got on, and I think when a lot of coaches and counselors come from that place of experience, they've had to go through something themselves. They've had to learn the process of how they can make that change within themselves. And then they moved right. I saw the big smile. So there's definitely something there. So we once we and I know it was for me. I came out of the victim mindset that I was going through, and then I started understanding thoughts, emotions, the mind, and then realizing, wow, we've got these amazing skills that we can help and contribute to the world, so that somebody else is going through what we went through, has the tools to climb up those steps to get to where they want to be. So, Laura, what was, and I like to use the word tipping point, but what was, and I know when I mentioned tipping point to you, you said, well, I think there's buckets of it all falling down, and that was a really powerful metaphor. I like that. What was Laura's tipping point or experience of not being in a field of flowers?
Well, yeah, I did say that it's like those buckets that fill the next and it continues down because I've had a lot of those over my life. I've had a lot of the trauma, a lot of the instances that mark so many people's life. And for me, like so many others, it's just life. That was how I grew up. That was what I experienced in life. I didn't understand that those could be significant in how I moved forward in the repetitive thoughts I had, in the difficulty and emotions I had. And so it took me a really long time. And I think that big bucket, final splash, was an instance. I had been at a job for almost 23 years, a corporate job, and um, it was difficult for me at the point that we're talking about, and this was kind of the end point, that tipping point, and I got in trouble, as you would say. And I had to sit with someone who I I we didn't get along. Let's just say that the particular person, the boss, and
It
everything, and
happens.
I was. I was the person that's like you. I was bold. I spoke up. I always say the things. I don't sugarcoat things very often. And so I was in trouble. And I came to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm at a point in my life, I don't need to be in trouble with anyone. I don't need to have someone else deciding for me who I'm going to be, how I'm going to speak, what I'm going to say, whether it's right or wrong. Uh, of course, within, not hurting anyone or not being out there and doing something, but just because someone didn't like the expression of how I am, I didn't want to have that person deciding for me what was okay and what wasn't. And that was a big tipping point for me. And I I had the crisis that so many people have, and what if this or what if that? And the it ran down the road of, oh my God, worst case scenario. But then I reeled it back in and kind of said, okay, let's see what actual worst case scenario would be. And what would that look like if I chose to no longer be in this job where I got money every week or two, whatever it was, where I got the regular paycheck, where I had the steady income, where I had the security? What would life look like at this point for me? And I sat down and did that. And you know what? All of those little scared what ifs came back to, yes, but you wouldn't let that happen, would you? You would go in this direction instead. And yes, that is a possibility. However, you're not going to let that happen because you could do this instead. And so everything started to change. And I had been working with the mind stuff for a while before that actually happened. And then I dug, that happened for a few years before that, where I was really starting to change the way my mind saw things, the way that I dealt with things. And that was probably the moment where I saw it really come together because once I started the different path, I didn't have the panic inside, the anxiety for days at a time over something I was thinking about. I didn't have the constant repetitive thoughts of, you can't do that. What if you do that and this happens? What if this? It was a centeredness and a calmness of, all right, that might not be the best situation, but how do we move beyond that? How do we move in life if that does happen? So So that's where things really changed for me. And that's what I try to bring for the people I work with now, is that centeredness of, even if things are going wrong around you, you can still be okay. You can still be okay.
I thank you so much for sharing. I, the inquisitive mind I have, what was the trouble you got into? Why did Laura get into trouble with the boss?
Laura got in trouble a lot in life for saying the thing, for speaking up, for not being the gentle, kind, quiet person that was expected of being, in this. So this is interesting. And I don't, this is hard to say because I worked in an industry where there were a lot of rough and tumble men, and they did the job. It was, it's blue collar work. They did the thing. They had tempers and aggression and all that. But for whatever reason, and maybe as a woman, I had these different expectations of me. If I spoke the same way these people did, especially to another woman who was not as vocal as I was, if I didn't say, everything is all right and you're going to be okay, and let's just fix this issue here. If I said, hey, this needs to be worked out, we need to figure this out, let's do this now. This is crap, let's finish it. And if I said it that way, then I was not being nice. I was not being however I was supposed to be. And another woman in the same area that I worked in uh, had issues with me for that because I wasn't as nice as they wanted me to be. I'm very upfront. I'm very matter of fact about things, and I was told constantly, you have to be this way. You have to, and it was all around me that it wasn't that you had to be
Yeah.
that way. And so it's kind of like, well, I'm not going to have different rules put on me. And I'm tired of being told that I have to be something different than who I am. I speak up. I say the thing. That's who I am. And I have learned over the years to filter it slightly so that it's not, you know, vicious or mean. So I knew at that point that I wasn't being vicious or mean or anything like that. I wasn't being out of line. I was just saying how it was. And so that was not okay with me any longer. And I knew that I had personality conflicts with this particular man who was a supervisor in the area. And and so it was just like, okay, we don't get along, but just because you're my supervisor doesn't mean you get to call me on the carpet just because I said something that was true and you just didn't like the way I said it. I wasn't being snarky or anything like that. So that was the trouble. That was the trouble.
So when you say, and I think this might be a good part of, and I think it'd be a really good learning part for people in business and entrepreneurship and going from that. When you talk about personality conflicts, you looking now at the situation, what was the personality conflict? What would you say that your personality is? I know disc assessment is probably very big in America, so we understand. I know where I am on the disc, and I know I still struggle with certain types of personalities because, like yourself, I am outspoken, but I'm well versed on monkey mind, so I know I've had to change the label I have for myself. Where, as some people would say, impulsive, I say no, I'm decisive. I'm not worried about the fear of I don't have to look at all parts, so I know that I'm decisive, which can be quite triggering for the analytical parts in disc. But for you, Laura, what was the personality conflict? For anyone listening to this, they'll be like, oh, I have the personality conflict. So where are you on the personality, and what was the other person's personality looking at that situation now?
I am someone, ooh, well, I don't know in terms of like so I'm going to do two things here. I'm going to explain one thing that uh, at one point I went to a person, like a let's get along thing once. and the way that they talked about something, they in this particular thing, they described personalities as animals. So you were a lion or a dolphin or a couple other things. And the lion was one extreme and the dolphin is this other one, and the other ones were kind of in the middle. And I got classified as a lion. And and then we had to talk with and communicate with the dolphins at one point. And this was an example of how different people could be, because this person, we were talking about a particular situation, and they said, the instance that they gave us was, okay, you come in on Monday morning and how do you start the workday, or how do you, and it's like, I come in, what do we need to do? What gets done? What's on the schedule? Let's get that going so that we can see what's happening. And I said, I don't want to sit and how was your weekend? How's this? How's everything? Are you feeling okay? How's everything with, and you're supposed to know the things that this person has going on in their life. And I said, I'm going to be the one that says, here's what it is. Let's what do you got to do? I don't want to hear about how your feelings are right now. And the other woman said to me, and she looked at me and she goes, you would make me cry. And I'm like, oh, because I'm like, you're one of those people. And she's like, you're one of those people. And so that is a little bit of how I see it with this particular person, with the person that I was dealing with in this job, that was the supervisor. He was very much, I think, I don't know, he might have been like in a type, slightly one of those other little animals, but he very much had the viewpoint of looking in the mirror, being that lion. He was going to be in charge. He was going to be the one that made the decisions about things, whether he knew about and there were several instances where he showed, unfortunately, that he did not understand the work that we were doing. We were kind of down on the ladder. My department. We were, we did this thing, and just in some of the conversations and things, it's like, no, we can't do it that way because, and no, we can't do it that way. And so I knew he didn't really understand some of it, and I would bring that up. We can't do that because of this. And I think that challenged him, and he did not want his authority challenged. He had to have the reins held tightly. You do it this way. You do it this way. And if you're not, he snapped the reins, because that was how he had control of his world, was holding on tight, holding on to the things that this is how it's got to be. And he, I think, felt that there was no respect if you challenged the information that he said. And so that was really hard for him. And I saw him that way a lot. And I felt kind of bad for him, because it's like, you can have such a better way of being in a leadership position if you realized you can be the leader and allow these amazing people to do the thing that they do best. But it was more about power and control for him. And I was the one that, I was the little monkey. I was just running over here and doing this, and always looking to say, this isn't working. This could be done better. This could be changed a little bit. But in bringing those things to anyone's attention, I was challenging the status quo. And that was not, in that particular corporate environment, really liked.
Yeah.
So
What was I came from
your question.
No, that's it. No, I did, and I do ask questions because I think that's especially for getting a message out in the podcast around personality types and understanding them. But at what point does Laura, as you said, go, this is not for me anymore? So I came from corporate America as well, and I actually wasn't adverse to corporate America. I thought it was great. It was COVID that just let me see the world in a different light. and I was just like, I don't know if I want to go on that track. I actually really I work for Royal Caribbean, so and I've got nothing but nice things to say about Royal Caribbean anyway. So,
I think corporate has a wonderful place.
yeah,
And you know what I think is interesting is, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but with
no,
corporate people, especially entrepreneurs anymore, they get upset almost when other people won't step away from corporate, when their idea of wonderful is corporate. But corporate is wonderful in certain ways. Corporate can be amazing. It can give you such satisfaction in the way that it works if you're willing to work in that and have the right corporation to work with. I'm sorry,
no, it's
but
good.
I just
Perfect. Perfect, Laura. Great thing to see. So when you say that, it just came to that. So the tipping point for Laura was because I mean, I don't know if this is an overgeneralization, but maybe corporate is not for the entrepreneurial mind because the entrepreneurial mind is break a few rules and move out of that box and create your own. And if the person above you doesn't have the foresight that you have, and that's the same in any kind of leadership role. It's and that I mean we can only suggest there's a part of insecurity in leadership as well, um, but it is one of those things that corporate's probably not for the entrepreneurial mind, such as yourself, Laura.
it surprised me honestly that I stayed in corporate as long as I did, because before that I had kind of been at a job for a few years. I had done this for a few years, and I totally kind of changed who I was along the way. I was a bookkeeper for 15 years, and in some way, shape, or form, I did that. And even alongside, and I've always done, I think, something on the side because I needed my mind to be doing other things. I was always really good at my job, at whatever I was doing, but I got bored with it. So maybe it is the monkey mind part that I have to be over here kind of doing this and doing this. And I do love that the work that I do now, I'm able to kind of bring in a different combination of things to make it work. Where in the job that I was in, this is how you did it. You showed up every day, you did this thing, you moved on and you did that. And and I've seen, for me, corporate changed a lot in the time that I was in it. As I said, I was in that job for 23 years. It was very different from the time I started to the time that I left. And and I think COVID made a huge change, unfortunate in an unfortunate way, with people and how things are kind of structured and done anymore. And it puts a lot of pressure, so much pressure on people out there. And I think there's a lot of people that uh, have come to breaking points, whether in an entrepreneurial job or in corporate, but with just the way that things have kind of changed in the world, there's a lot of breaking points that happen. But those breaking points began a long time ago. Those
Yeah,
breaking points started, when you were tiny. And now it's just that enough of the bricks have been put on that walnut, so to speak, your brain, your body, that it's cracked it now. And for me, that's what that was. That was the last thing. It's like all of these bricks had been being placed on me, and that was the breaking point for me. And it might be something terribly simple for someone. For me, it was that moment of, I don't want to hear you tell me the difficulties of myself. I know who I am. I know the difficulties I have. I don't need you to tell me anymore. And I didn't want to hear it. And I was like, here's what I accept now. Here's what I don't. I know that sometimes I might snap at someone, or I might say the thing a little too bluntly. I know that. And now I can often pull it back a little and go, okay, I said that, but here's what I mean by that. And I can correct that a little, or I can soften it a little, but I'm never going to stop saying the thing.
yeah,
I'm not.
yeah. No, Laura, it's amazing. So you mentioned before we started the podcast that you have a history, or there is something close to your heart, which is first responders and the military. You work with first responders on helping them manage their mindsets and overcoming traumas. What What was it that made you resonate with first responders?
My
Yeah,
family and friends, and I come from a military family way back, even carried on not through me, through my son, and watching some of the things and that happen with people who are in the military, because it's fascinating if you go and look at the history of some of it, even first responders. I have all of that in my family. I have family who are police officers, who have been involved in police, who are even in the lawyers, somehow related to
yeah,
those types of situations. But with the military, unfortunately, a lot of people that go into the military have a lot of those kind of predispositions to have difficulties. And at one point, years and years ago, they realized that and they started to look at that a little bit. However, because it was at a time that was really difficult in our history and there were wars being in place, it would have stunted the draft. It would have caused problems. So they had to say, we can't look at those right now. We can't decide on that. We have to have these people, we have to have numbers. And so they brought those in. And then they actually had some great ways. Hypnosis and that type of mind work has been around for a really long time, and it helped. And they did studies. The Mayo Clinic said yes, absolutely, it's a good thing to do in like the 50s, or maybe it was 50 years ago. I never remember the number, but they said yes. There's a guy who did some amazing studies, amazing work, and it used to be called shell shock, who came in and said, "This works. Let's do this. Let's help them." But it got shoved to the side as, oh, that's not really what's going to happen, but it does happen. And the thing with the work that we do in terms of mindset and the work that's there is, it's not something. This is what made the difference for me here. When I learned that you could go in and do the work without them having to sit and tell you all about what happened. You don't have to sit and say, here's what happened, here's all the things, here's my childhood, here's everything. Because oftentimes first responders cannot talk about those things. The military, especially, there's, top secret stuff. They can't say why they experience the difficulty they're experiencing. They can't tell you what they've been through. They're not allowed. And police officers, same thing. They can't necessarily tell you the specifics of what happened in their situation that brought them to that tipping point, to that difficulty. That's all of a sudden they're raging. All of a sudden they're having difficulty getting up, going to work in the morning. All of a sudden they're having migraines. All of a sudden all these things are happening. IBS. The laundry list of things that happen for people, the symptoms that come. And for me to realize you can go in and help someone and they don't have to sit and talk to you for 2 years or 5 years or even 2 months. It can happen a lot quicker. I'm sure you have people that you work with that it's a number of sessions. There's been people I'm aware of that come in and all of a sudden they've had this difficulty for years and years and years, and they come in and they have one session and it starts the change process for them right there.
yeah,
To me, that's magic. That's amazing. And I want the change for them
yeah,
because they have put themselves forward in a way that a lot of people don't in this world. They came up and said, I'm a protector. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to step in. I want to see things done in the right way. And if we can't support them, then we're not even doing for, if we're not doing for them, we're not doing for ourselves, because they're standing up for us. They're standing there for us. And I want to support them in any way I can. It's really close to my heart
yeah,
because I've seen in my own family and friends the difficulty that comes
yeah,
when you're told, be this person, be, and don't talk about stuff and don't do the things. And so they don't know, okay, I can't talk about it, but they don't know that they don't have to talk about it to
mm,
help themselves.
yeah,
And that's what I want to put out there for people is you don't have to.
yeah.
You can still, and you're never too broken. You are never too broken to be healed. And even if they say you have to learn to live with it, I don't believe that. I absolutely do not believe that.
And belief is a big part, isn't it? And and I know that when we're talking, and I know we've not met, and that's the power of the podcast is we bring different ideas and opinions into it, and then we can create those conversations for what different people's belief systems are about trauma, about mindset, and how working with a mindset or a mentor or a mind management coach has massive benefits. Because I know we talked about it and we talked about, you don't need to talk about your problems forever and ever and ever. We can really make some quick resets to the nervous system to help people move forward. And I know one of my clients had struggled with something for about 45 years, and he was like, "I can't believe what we did in one session." And I was like, "Yep, that's how quick it is." But it's the belief of the other person, isn't it? It's the belief of the client of not being explained how quickly severe trauma and addiction can be managed quicker than expectations sometimes, even though we manage expectations, because it always comes down to the client. So for Laura, reaching out right now, what is the cost of choosing unhappiness over happiness?
For me personally, or for
Well,
what I would
for you and then for the clients, because we talked about before we went live with the podcast, and we only ever do 5 minute prep. Was what was the cost of you not realizing you could choose happiness?
Oh goodness, I drove to work. I remember, and this is another one of those buckets that started tipping, but not long before that, maybe a year before that particular one I'm talking about, I drove to work because of another situation that was kind of going on and some changes that were difficult, um, and I drove in crying every day. Drove in. I mean, and I would put music on really loud to just get it all out along the way, driving into work with tears running down my face. And I don't even remember, I was talking to somebody or something, and maybe they said something, but I realized in the moment, one day, you know what? No one else gets to choose my happiness, because I was literally I was giving away my control in my life and my happiness. Because of circumstances, I was letting myself be unhappy. I was letting it upset me to the point of tears, to frustration, to upset. And and I finally went, you know what? Is this really how I want to go through the next however many years? If I'm going to stay in this job, first of all, if I'm going to live in this life, do I want to experience these emotions for the duration? And it was like, no. And so I thought, well, how do I even change that because of all this stuff that's happening out here? And I thought, well, can't I find happiness here regardless of, they can decide, like a job can decide the hours that you work. They can maybe decide the clothes that you wear. They can decide the work that you're going to do during the day, but they do not get to decide what my thoughts are,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm tuning into for happiness, what the joy is that sparks inside of my heart. They don't get to decide how I react to the situation. They don't get to decide if I find little bits of happiness through and that's what I put into play in that moment. I am going to find something to smile about every single day. I'm going to find something somewhere. And when you give your brain that job, it's aces. It goes off and finds those things. It does what you ask it to do, and it did. And even on difficult days, I could find, even if it was, I happen to travel. And so even if it was seeing the most beautiful sunrise coming over these amazing mountains that I live, and I would just take that breath and go, thank you for that. Even that tiny thing right there. And I had one thing in that day that I found. And of course I found more and more and more. And I realized that I could be here and I could be okay. And even if it was hitting the fan around me, if things were stumbling and rolling, yes, yes, I still got upset sometimes. I am never, and I tell this to people, I'm never going to take away your emotions because being human is the experience we're here for.
Yep.
So you're still going to be on this roller coaster of life that takes you through anxiety, that takes you through sadness, that takes you through anger and happiness and joy and all the things. The key is not to get stuck down in one of them, not being stuck in anxiety or stuck in depression. You might still experience those things. I hope you do. I really hope you always experience all of it because that's humanity.
Mhm.
But it's learning to be in the flow of it and move beyond it to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And that to me is finding the happiness that
Yeah.
you can be in.
And to any first responders in America or the UK who's listening to Laura right now, what would be top three tips that Laura would say, look, if you were to start doing this, this, and this, you might see the change that you're looking for?
Oh, goodness. So the top three tips. One of them is to change your belief around being broken. You're not broken. And even if you have some issues going on, you can be put back together. You can be healed and whole and move forward, that you don't have to live with whatever it is that you're experiencing right now. You don't have to live in that space. And if you can tell that to yourself, remind yourself that, and remind yourself that it's happening every day for people to move beyond what you're experiencing right now. And when you can see that and realize that and go, oh, okay, if they're doing it, why can't I? And then come to that moment of going, well, let's see if I can, because test yourself a little bit, test those limits of what you've put up as boundaries, as a fence of going, that's as far as I can go. Well, maybe that's not quite right. Maybe have someone else help dismantle that little fence that's in front of you. Because reaching out, here's another thing, second thing, I guess, reaching out is not a weakness. It's the most courageous and strength-filled thing you can ever do in your life is to reach out and say, I need a little help right here. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if it's possible, but I know that I'm not managing it in the best possible way. So what do you got? And look around and see. And ask questions of people. And when you do hear someone that says the right thing for you that maybe you believe or don't believe, investigate it anyway. Investigate it anyway. And the last thing is, how do I put this nicely?
You don't have to.
There,
Tell us how Laura wants to tell us.
there are wonderful ways of coping with things. That's great. That's great. But coping should be a temporary situation. So so don't stand in all of these little things that are getting you through coping, thinking that it's changing anything. I see people who have panic attacks or anxiety, and I watched a video one time where this woman, her daughter, little tiny person, had to help her move through this anxiety attack that she was having by, blowing out these little imaginary candles on her hand. Great. Okay. But that's not the way to continue your life. Don't stay in those little coping mechanisms. Go in to find what's causing the panic, what causing the anxiety, and just like a weed, get to the root of it, pull it out.
Yeah.
Don't have someone clip all these little things because the weed comes back. It grows over here and it grows over there. It's important that you go in and dig at the root and get that. When it comes out, then there's no more symptoms. There's no more anything that you have to find these coping mechanisms for. So absolutely find the coping mechanisms in the moment, but move beyond them. So
Boom. Mic dropped right there, Laura. We'll even call this podcast Coping Mechanisms Suck. Coping mechanisms don't work. That's going to be the marketing extraordinaire. Because a lot of, and it's funny when you ask that, and a lot of clients ask me, well, what is it what is it Cuddy does differently that therapists and counselors don't do? I don't give you coping mechanisms. I literally, and I've even said this to a lot of my, I've said this to a lot of my clients. I will ask you horrible questions. I'm genuinely going to ask you a question that's going to hurt less than the trauma. But you'll be like, what are you asking me that question for? Because we need to get to the root. Just let me dig and I'll pull it out, just like taking a tooth out. All right. I'm the root canal surgery of coaching. That's literally, do you know, I'm going to use that as an analogy now. I am the root canal of coaching. That's what mind management is. Everybody said, and I know, oh, well, I keep getting triggered. I keep getting triggered. Well, then look for the glimmer. Look for the glimmer. Don't look for the trigger. You know, it's the trigger that's the problem. It's not the rest of the world. It's like being uncomfortable to work with someone. And that's what I always say to my clients. As long as you understand the power of resonation, we can get to the trigger, pull it out. And guess what? The next time something happens, you won't trigger. You won't need a coping mechanism. You just nailed it there, Laura. You did. Well done. And I am the root canal of coaching.
That's good. That's a good thing. And that right there is the difference that makes the difference.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what makes the difference between therapy or a psychology. I don't know if the right word psychology or a psychotherapist, I think is the word I'm looking for. And this is not to diminish psychotherapists or counselors. Everything has its place. And I would suggest, as maybe your clients do, a lot of my clients have tried counseling, have tried therapy, and they're like, why am I still getting triggered? Why is this still bothering me? And I'm like, do you know what? Come and see the root canal of coaching.
Well, I agree with you. And sometimes, you know what? Sometimes you do need someone to talk to.
Yeah.
You just need someone an outside person
Yeah.
to hear what you have to say. And that's great. That's great. But if you have something that is not working in your life, if you're really having struggles, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, whatever it is, just talking about it doesn't necessarily change it. It doesn't necessarily bring the change, because once you come into an awareness of something and seeing it, that's great. It does shift something, but then, like you said, let's pull it out. Let's get rid of it. Or, do you want to hold on to that? Do you want to keep that there? That's going to continue to run on the same track over and over? Or do you really want to let go of that and have a difference in your life? It's
Yeah.
up to you.
Yeah.
It's absolutely up to you. I only work with the willing. I don't want someone who comes and says, well, this is going on, this is going on, this is going on, and so says I need to fix this. And it's like, well, what do you think? Do you need to fix it? Do you want to not feel that way or have that anger outburst or those emotional issues? Do you not want that? Because I'm only there for you.
Yeah.
I'm not there for them.
I love that. Perfect. So I want to ask you a question. Purely from I've never been. Tell me what life in Montana is like.
Right now, it's really freaking cold.
Is
It
it?
is, oh my goodness. Today is winter. It is in Fahrenheit, I think it's about 15 below right now. So it's pretty cold. But
Oh,
on the other side of that, it's only going to be that way for a day or two, which is really odd here. We usually have it for, a good solid week or something. So I'm guessing that's still on its way at some point. So it's beautiful. When you see all of the amazing snow and the beauty of the mountains. And so this is my backyard that you see on my, this is
in the
literally my
summer,
back
obviously, in the summer.
in the summer. And that's why I keep it here because it helps remind me that it's going to look like this again.
Yeah.
All things, are in a cycle. And so it's going to look like this again. And I live in that moment of that's beautiful, but this is even better. And it is changing, ever changing. As with so many places, and especially during COVID, and then with the popularity of the show Yellowstone and all that
Well, that's
stuff,
what I was going to
everybody
ask. That, as far as I know, Montana is Yellowstone territory, right?
Yeah, it is. And they filmed some of it here and some of it they didn't. But yes, that's Yellowstone. And I have this wonderful shirt that says it might be a train station kind of day because on Yellowstone, if you watch Yellowstone, you'll get that. But I had to have that shirt. I'm like, oh, I
Oh,
need
I might
that.
have to get my wife that T-shirt. Oh, I need to. I didn't know you could be. Oh my. Oh, I need to buy my wife that T-shirt. Right, I'm going to write that down as a note. Because that is a really good. She loves Yellowstone. I I,
Yes, that
I enjoyed it, but she went and watched the other series, the earlier ones, the prequels. But I was like, I zoned out with them. But no, so train station kind of day, brilliant,
yeah, that is, and I love it. And I think I found that one on Etsy, and it is really a nice one. But it's wonderful. I love being in Montana. I'm really lucky that both my children are here right now, and my grandchildren are all here, and so it's a nice place to be. I'm really blessed with where I live. As you can see, I'm on a few acres, and I get to kind of not have the people super close to me. I think I don't know if it's an age thing or what it is, but sometimes I love people. I love working with people and doing that, but when you have to be out in the world sometimes with all the people. I grew up in a city and I don't enjoy being in that environment as much anymore. People can tend to I get more annoyed with them, like just stay in your space and be over there and don't
Montana's
be
live. Go away.
go away, go away. And I just watch the silliness sometimes and then I have the heart that steps in and goes, "I- they are so hurt or so angry in their life that, they're road raging or they're having these issues." And I just look at people with a different perspective anymore to see, oh my goodness, I hope you're okay. And I always try to have that moment of a little bit of compassion for people. But I'm really lucky to be able to. We have lakes. I'm a big swimmer, which is a little different here in Montana because it's not super warm and you have to wait till about July or August, good time for you to maybe go in the water then. So that's great. But I love that we have all of the options of being in the water, being in the hills, being in the meadows, being kind of in all the places, and it's pretty wonderful.
Fantastic, Laura. Thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me and having such a fun conversation. It was great to meet you.
You too, and I think we come from a place. As we wrap up, if it's in the mind, it can be managed. There's nothing that can't be managed, and I generally always start the podcast with I'm a big believer in this, but I'll finish off why I'm a big believer in looking alternative. That I don't. I think woo is the new practical. To be fair, I think there should be more credence to the alternative or to the woo. Um, and woo is the new practical. Give it a try. I think that's what people should know. I'll get your details and I'll put them into the podcast for you, the links and things like that, so that people can get in contact with you if you want to. But thank you very much for being on, Laura. I know what time is it with you? Because I know, are you 9 hours behind us?
I think we're seven. It's 7 a.m. for me here. So
Wow, that's why
we
you've got a beautiful sunrise and a nice meadow in the background.
I'm a morning person, so it works for me. I'm okay with that. But thank
Perfect.
you so much. And if you ever want to have another chat and dig deeper onto the actual woo side that I mentioned, I'm happy to
Yeah,
come on and have
I love
those
that.
chats.
Thank you so much. Laura, it's been an
You're
absolute pleasure. As always, big love from Cuddy, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Mind Management Mentors. Remembering that if you're enjoying the content, like and subscribe. As always, always remember if it's in the mind, it can be managed.